All right. Hey TP, how you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
It's the end of a beautiful day down here in New Orleans, having a little glass of rosé. Uh really enjoyed the sunshine today. I think you said that it was nice up there as well.
Yeah. I got to sit outside and drink coffee in a t-shirt for the first time all year.
Sitting outside and drinking coffee in a t-shirt is like that's all I need. That's
Yeah,
all I need in life right there. Like
yeah. It doesn't get much better, man.
It doesn't. I mean, what is there? Everything else is just gravy after that.
I agree, which makes like November, December, January, February, March, rough months up here where I am, but we
Hey,
deal.
nice t-shirt, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, let's get a good view of that.
Yeah, brand new. Still got
Yeah,
the off the press smell.
very nice. The Dr. Lowe store is still not open to the public, but
I know somebody, man.
yeah, soon to be open to the public. Uh,
Yeah.
so, uh, I don't want to like
Well, I'll
impose
jump
an
in there.
agenda here or anything.
Uh,
We could talk about anything. How do you think Biden's doing so far?
I think he's doing great, man.
Yeah.
Uh, there's things obviously but yeah, I don't want to. Let's not go there.
But I mean, I'm pretty happy, on balance.
Me too. I
And
mean, after the 4 years we went through,
oh,
it's yeah, it's
still, we're
nice.
all sort of still processing
Yeah,
that like
yeah.
happened.
It was yeah, yeah. It's another thing that makes coffee in the sunshine and vaccines on the horizon that just
Yeah.
make life feel pretty good right now.
You've had one shot and I've had one shot.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
both between our vaccine.
We're half vac.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a darn nice thing. Especially because I got some gigs coming up and I'm doing a little in-person teaching again.
Oh, so
So,
and so Anna doesn't she doesn't approve of all this.
well, she just doesn't, we live in a very respectable neighborhood, as you know, so
Yeah.
I think she'll be okay, though, however you decide, however you see fit to hit the road again.
I keep
Uh,
like thinking of trimming it, and then I'm like, but it's never going to get back to this.
there is a vibe. There's a vibe going on there. So, though, I thought I would turn the tables a little bit on you this time and ask you some questions. Uh,
I
'Cause I
always
know,
love when you ask me questions.
yeah. Oh, good, good. I'm an inquisitive person.
Sure.
You got a solo CD or album? What do you call it these days, by the way?
We call it an album and or a record, and I
Okay.
I want to tell you what you already know, but I want to tell you in the context of this video that it is finished as of today.
Oh, wow.
As of today.
I actually didn't know that. I knew it
Yeah.
was close. I knew it was very close, but
It's actually finished as of last night.
okay.
And
What
then
was the last thing you did to it?
the last thing I did to it was a second take at the remaster of the remix of Ship.
Uh, this
And I actually boosted it up in level a little bit more.
boosted up the bass is the last thing you did. I like that, man.
No, I mean the whole track. I boosted up
Oh,
the limiter, the limiting of
okay.
that. So, some on this album, some of the tracks are actually louder than others. That old way of making records, you might normalize all the tracks up to the same peak
Yeah.
volume. But since some of the tracks on this record are very rockin' and some are very mellow, I actually have some that, don't even peak up to 0 dB. They stay lower. And then the tracks, like Ship which is a pretty rockin' one, that peaks higher. So
Cool.
there's different philosophies of how to do it, like
Yeah.
anything.
Well,
But in case you're watching this interview in the future on YouTube, maybe you're even watching it years in the future and this record isn't even new anymore. Well, this is the day that I finished the record officially.
that's good. March 22nd.
Yes, March 22nd, 2021.
Okay.
So, and by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube years in the future, thank you for paying attention to this old YouTube video. I'm glad you came across it.
Yes, hello. I hope all is good in the future. Hope we're still breathing the air and all that. So I wanted to ask you, I want to talk more about the new CD, but I wanted to back up a little bit first.
Sure. We have a long history before this.
I know. We could talk for a long time. But I've watched a bunch of your song story videos in about God Street Wine songs, so I encourage people to watch those.
And thank you for watching them.
I'm not going to delve too much into those songs since they've been covered, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about writing in general.
Yeah.
Like I think when you wrote those God Street tunes, you kind of had very specific purposes for writing those tunes. Like, we need a rocker at 2 a.m. when the bar is packed. Is that correct?
Yeah, I did write it with those kind of concerns in mind a lot of the time. Maybe not for every song, but definitely for a lot of our songs. I was very much thinking of sort of practical questions about performance and what would sound good in the types of venues where we were playing. Yeah.
Right.
And also writing parts for the particular musicians in the band and how, what I knew would sound good for Aaron and for John and so on like that. So yeah, a lot of the God Street Wine songwriting was very geared for that setting, for that time, and for those musicians. Yeah, absolutely.
And did you have a time you would usually do it? Like, were you on the road when you write a lot of these songs, or did you like wake up in the morning and think I'm going to write three songs today for God Street?
I would have loved to write 3 songs in a day for God Street, but I think I never had a set routine. I probably would have been much more productive if I had, but as life on the road is kind of works counter to having set routines, unfortunately. And since in the part of my life where I haven't mostly been on the road, I'm very much a creature of routine. I definitely have a daily routine, and I like that. And so that's much more natural for me. But on the road, there's no routine. It's just every day is a new adventure. It's kind of continuously disorienting.
That's kind of freeing too, though, right?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, for one thing, for God Street Wine, most of my experience of that band is being on the road. And even, on the road implies that you're like out on tour and away for months at a time. And so it wasn't necessarily like that for us at the beginning. It was, we're home and then we'd go out for a weekend or a Thursday through Sunday, like 4 days and then back. Those kind of shorter regional runs are more typical for a regional band. But it was still like, you're playing that many times, you're playing that often. You're not going to get into a sort of daily routine of wake up at 7:45 and drink the coffee and take care of your emails,
Right.
So to circle back to your question about songwriting, no, it was always different. Sometimes I wrote the song with actually a recording and making a demo. Sometimes I wrote it out on paper. Sometimes it was just in my head. Sometimes it came out of a jam session that literally happened live. It happened in all kinds of ways and in different places.
And were there songs sometimes that you wrote and you're like, this isn't really a God Street Wine song, and then you kind of put it aside and maybe came back to it years later? Did that ever happen?
Well, it sounds like you're setting me up to talk about some of the songs on this record.
Well, I didn't know that, actually.
Well, yeah, on this record, You Know Me Best and Guns and Sharp Swords were both written back in the God Street Wine.
Ah, I knew
And
You Know Me Best, but I didn't know about Guns and Sharp Swords.
Guns and Sharp Swords, and that title comes from the Bob Dylan song "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall." I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. So it's a quote from that. But anyway, yeah, that one I wrote, and we made it as a demo in 1996. Aaron sang it, and we recorded it, but we never played it live. And just like you said, I think it was just that didn't quite feel like us. It feels much more like me now than it felt like God Street Wine, at the time. And
Yeah.
we had a lot of songs, we had a really big repertoire. So
Yeah.
it wasn't as if there were a lot of songs that just fell by the wayside, didn't get played,
Seapods were jealous of GSW's song catalog.
that we had a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been through
We had our share too.
I've been through your lyric website that the Bourbon Cowboy created, right? And when I started going through that, learning some small handful of Seapods tunes, I was pretty blown away by how many Seapods tunes there were that I had never heard of. And
well, there's a reason why you didn't hear a lot of them, because a lot of them, Bourbon Cowboy was very inclusive, but some of those songs were maybe played like at one show, or like 1 month over 3 or 4 shows. So there were a lot that just didn't make the cut.
Yeah, but I think it was similar for us and for you guys, that we had a real core of the sort of very regularly played songs. Then we had a sort of second tier of ones that at certain periods were maybe played regularly, and then they sort of faded out of the rotation and maybe came back, and then a third tier of just, we maybe played it once or twice, or
right,
maybe we used to play it more, but it just fell by the wayside.
Yeah, totally. So let's speed forward a little in time. You broke up.
Okay.
GSW broke up, and you are living in a sort of cabin-like place in upstate New York, or at least you were there a lot of the time. I don't know if that was your permanent residence or not. But
in Argyle, New York, in a converted barn.
Yeah, and so at some point you started writing Henry's House, and we never talked much about what made you decide, like, ooh, I could write a rock opera.
Well, I was so about the place in Argyle. Lisa and I were living in Brooklyn. We had a condo in Brooklyn in the last year or two of God Street Wine, and then I was not happy in Brooklyn because I didn't have any place to set up a studio or make music. I mean, it was cool to be in Brooklyn and all.
Yeah.
But when I had more time on my hands, I had to rent this studio down on J Street under the Manhattan Bridge, and even that was expensive and it was noisy. And I wanted a place where I could like make music at all hours to my heart's content, and where I could really just hang out and be casual about it, and not where I had to like go to a studio. Ever since Red, I've liked to like live and work in the same place.
It's a beautiful thing.
And so we rented this house up in Argyle and started driving up there on weekends. And eventually we sold the place in Brooklyn and lived in that Argyle house full time for a couple of years, as you remember, and kind of became a resident of that area for a while. But at first I was going back and forth a lot. And on these long drives in early 2000, I think, on a lot of these long drives, I listened to a lot of music. One album I started listening to a lot was The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway by Genesis, which is a great, I don't know if you'd categorize it as rock opera, but it's a great concept album, double album that has a story, and it has fantastic songwriting, and it has great instrumental music sections, and it has really some interesting ideas to it. I mean, it is a classic. And I got real deep into it. And I think that was really the seed of Henry's House. And the very first thing I wrote for Henry's House, as I think I may have told you in the past, was very, I think if you hear it out of context now with me saying that, you'll recognize it as being very sort of Genesis influence. And it was this. In green waters, I see the tiny bubbles rise. The skulls of bluegills, glassy eyes. And it wasn't like this is going to be a rock opera. It certainly wasn't like it was going to be a children's thing. It was just like, here's a story about somebody who's like depressed and floating in green waters and feels like they've sort of lost all motivation.
Yeah. That's interesting, because until like we had a brief conversation the other day, but I had no idea that was the first song that you wrote from Henry's House. That would not have been the one I would expect to have been because that seems so integral to the story. They're trapped under a lake.
Yeah,
I would have expected like When We Were Very Young or something to maybe have been the kickoff.
Well, I think When We Were Very Young did come early on in the process. I think that was one of the first handful, and that was when I was starting to have some vague outline of the story. And so, yeah, that was a very sort of definitional song in terms of actually creating the story and the themes. And the theme of Henry's House also, as it developed, was very much around the fact that Lisa was pregnant with Millie, the first child who turned out to be Millie. And I was looking at being a father in a whole different kind of life. And I was thinking about parenthood. And so the theme of relationships between parents and children and the different kinds of needs in both directions, that became a theme of Henry's House. And so that's what I think you hear in When We Were Very Young.
Yeah, for sure.
So it very gradually evolved in those first few songs of, I started writing a sequence of sort of Genesis influenced songs, and then realizing that they might have this story link. And then, I think when I wrote When We Were Very Young is when that was the sort of the threshold of, okay, sort of here's how it's going to be. But there was still a lot of work to be done at that point. And I think I did then, once the story was more fleshed out, I did go back to those early, more vignette kind of songs like In Green Waters and Smile the Yellow Sun, and sort of edit them a little bit to make them more explicitly part of the story.
Okay, that makes sense. And did you have because I was in the Low Faber band, and
yes, you were.
And at that point, did you?
And you were in Henry's House, the stage show.
I know. Which
not
was
only
amazing.
Playing music, but as an actor.
Yeah, I know, which was the highlight of my life. Crazy Davie. Hey, kids.
I think the character of Crazy Davie, I can't remember my actual thinking about it, but I'm pretty sure I must have just intended it with you in mind from the very beginning, because it was so perfect for you.
Well, the only thing is I watched it. Well, part of the reason I think we're talking about Henry's House is you recently digitized it.
Yeah. So Marty Racine sent me a DVD.
Yeah,
and I ripped the DVD, and so I shared it with you online.
Are you going to release it at some point as a full video?
Yeah, good. Definitely. I think soon. I just needed to make sure that it was okay with the people involved for me to do that.
Yeah. Well, it was great seeing it, and that's what made me start thinking about it again. All those memories.
No, I mean, I've heard from many people continuously over the years that it was really a special time in their lives, a special experience. And obviously it definitely was for me. So yeah. I think there's a lot of us feel that way.
Me too. So what I was going to ask you was, as you're writing this thing, you're all of a sudden realizing this is a concept album. Did you already have in mind that you wanted to start a band at that point? Like a new band? Or did that kind of evolve too?
No, I think that evolved. And the people who played on the record is not all the people who played in the band. And on the record, the keyboards are all Peter Levin and Jason Crosby. And then it turned out, to my dismay, that neither of them was able to play in the band, to come on the road with us.
Yeah.
And you and Ted and Todd, so I was just very fortunate that the Seapods had just decided to call it quits, and you three were just there and available. So you three became, a big part of the record, and then the band and the stage show. But I had to find Devin Greenwood and Dave Agar, because
Great additions.
I knew that I wanted to have two keyboardists. Where we actually had three keyboards, because Angela played keyboard some in our band as well.
Yeah.
And I knew that I wanted to have those multiple keyboards. I knew I wanted to have a lush sound where we could hear like B3 and piano and clav and all this stuff going at the same time. And then Dave, playing cello, that was just really a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That all was a gradual evolution, I think, into another concept album for you, which I wasn't as involved with this one, but Friday Night Freak Show. Was that something that you were just like, well, I wrote one concept album, I think I'll write another one?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, I love doing this. I've always like to write a lot, make things that are long. When I eventually wrote a book, it was like twice as long as you were supposed to submit to the publisher.
Wow. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
So yeah, I guess I'm not into the whole brevity thing, to paraphrase the Big Lebowski.
Yeah. The dude.
But yeah, Friday Night Freak Show was intended to be another of the same form, basically another double CD concept rock opera with a lot of musical ideas, and the story was more adult than Henry's House, but not drastically so. Maybe it was like teenage rather than adult.
Right. So we're kind of going fast through time here, but I think there was a period after that where you probably didn't write much because you were busy in school and becoming a history PhD.
Yeah. So I started grad school at Princeton University in 2006. Also, I had my second child, my son, that same year. So really, between having a newborn and starting grad school in a very demanding program where the reading load was like 1,500 pages a week, I really didn't have time for much else. And I think my only music for a few years there was just playing around Princeton with this kind of dad cover band, the Great Road West. And to be honest, I'm real grateful to those guys for giving me that opportunity to just play once in a while. And I actually learned a lot of cover songs playing with them, and had a great time. And we're still good friends.
Cool. But over time, I guess, like the songs from Bottomland, were they written over that period, or were they more like just all at once at a certain time?
No, there were later. So what really got me back into writing was God Street Wine reuniting, and that rhymed, and I totally didn't even intend it to. But yeah, God Street Wine reunited in 2010 after a decade of not playing, and then we started doing a reunion series of shows, every year. And after we did that a couple of years, I started thinking, well, this is all well and good. We're playing songs that we wrote back in like 1994, but what if we try writing some new songs? And so around about 2013, I started writing new stuff for God Street Wine. and some of it we ended up actually recording and releasing. So we've actually released a fair amount of new material in like
Yeah.
2016, 17, and 18.
Yeah, that's right. Some good tunes too. Some of those were songs that had been written, right, already, or were they brand new?
Well, all the 2017 recordings were brand new, and we released them. They were released digital only, and they were released as singles. A track at a time. There was no album, so maybe we didn't get people's attention as much as if we would have released an album. But the tracks were like "Smile on Us, Sarah," and "Stories of Silver," "Firelight Flickers," "St. Lucy's Day." There's a bunch more, but.
Yeah.
I think they all have a pretty coherent sound, and they have a certain vibe. It could easily have been an album, just that they just weren't. But definitely, I was fully back into.
So that lit the fire again.
Yeah, definitely.
And then what led to the soul to Bottomland?
So Bottomland, in 2019, we were making another. We had decided with God Street to make a record, but we had decided to make it with old songs from our early days that had never been recorded. We had decided to go down that path. And meanwhile, I had started writing material that was much more, for me, like going back to my roots of bluegrass and folk and country music, which is what I grew up doing, because of my mom being in the bluegrass band and all. And so, that was kind of where my listening was going at the time. I was listening to a lot of Jason Isbell and Sturgill Simpson, and I was going back and listening to a lot of older stuff like Willie and Emmylou, and so that was really where my head was at. And so I just decided that I was going to do two projects on two different tracks. I'm just going to separate in my mind the God Street project and the Low project. I remember having a very explicit conversation with John Bevo about this at the time, where I said that, I am writing new songs, but right now I think I'm not writing them for God Street 1. I think I'm writing them for a solo project.
Yeah.
Because God Street 1 is doing this other thing.
Plus, those are very personal songs, I would think, for you.
They're very personal, and there was some shit going on, and so I was kind of, processing it in that way, which is, I think,
processing through songwriting.
Yeah. I wouldn't recommend songwriting as therapy. It's not. That's not a good form of therapy, certainly by itself. But I think actually writing songs about things that happen to you can also help you gain some detachment and objectivity in a funny kind of way.
Yeah. So it takes it from being internal and kind of bringing it outside where you can look at it.
And you sort of have to think critically, like, okay, this is something that's very powerful when it's my private experience, but how can I turn it into something that is of general interest?
Yeah, right.
What about this is generalizable? That's how you think of when you're writing a song about, at least for me. I don't know about you or others, but
because you don't want to get too specific, but you can definitely convey the essence of what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings me to your newest CD.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, album or recording.
Finished today.
It was finished today. Yeah. And I'm really excited. I got to play on a good chunk of it. And I had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, you played on everything except Guns and Sharp Swords and Kenosha Baby, which I played bass on, and the bass on those is very minimalistic. And there was no need to have you do it. And the final track on the album is called Just to Be, and that has no bass. I
heard that for the first time yesterday, actually. Good tune.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
it's kind of, that one seems to me to be a little bit of a sequel to the Lucky Ones. Could you see that
Yeah, you're
correlation?
right, because they're both about, trying to find some sanity in this crazy world.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of simplifying. Like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, cool, man. Now the song I wanted to ask you about, I yesterday or today, I forget which, but I typed out the lyrics to Claiborne Avenue,
Oh,
which
cool. Yeah.
I played on, but at the time I'm playing on, I'm not thinking too much about the lyrics, except
Of
for
course.
a certain phrase might jump out at me, and I think, oh, that might command a little bass spell, you know. But I'm not thinking, and also the tone of the lyrics overall. But like,
Yeah.
not digging too much into it because I'm thinking musically.
Right.
Uh,
No, I think that is totally normal. And I think, there's no reason why you should pay much attention to the lyrics.
yeah,
I think someone who's not a musician might wonder about that. Like, shouldn't they understand what the song is about? And it's like, not really. Like, you understand on a musical level what the music is doing. And you
right.
sort of assume, I guess, the lyric is kind of headed to that same place too, right?
Yeah, yeah. You get a general sense that it's
You catch the vibe.
you catch the vibe
Yeah.
exactly. Uh, so the chorus of that song, who knows what you could catch in there. So this song, I'm gathering, you wrote post-pandemic.
Well, during.
So because it very much it kind of calls to three things to me. It calls to the feeling of being kind of under lockdown, and probably fairly early in the whole lockdown thing, where it was kind of like
Yeah.
everybody was sort of in a daze, like what's going on here,
Right.
and then also weaving in New Orleans history,
Yeah.
sort of a love song to New Orleans maybe, and then a little bit of just your sense of being in the whole thing too, where you don't really make an appearance till the third verse as the narrator, I noticed.
Yeah. Well, I sort of tried to turn a corner there in the third verse. Like a lot of songs turn a corner in the third verse. Like the perspective changes a little.
Right.
I think that's kind of a common thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the first, half of the song is more about sort of public things, what's going on in the
Right.
city and what's going on with the pandemic and the tourists not being there. And then I just was like, well, let's have a little more personal story that's happening in the midst of this, because part of the whole thing we've been going through is that people's personal stories, haven't stopped. They've
Right.
just had to kind of continue and be intertwined with this larger historical moment that we're all living through. And that's actually what really fascinates me.
Yeah. And I think you did a great job capturing that.
Well, thank you so much, TP.
You got it.
I'm going to bend down for 1 minute. So I just feel the need to announce this because
Should I do something to distract people?
no,
What do
my
you do?
loop pedal, I'm looking down at my pedal board because my whole streaming rig is here. My loop pedal is blinking in a way that I've never seen it do before. Like usually it blinks in a certain speed when it's paused or when it's
Right.
recording, but right now it's blinking between red and green. Just let me.
So Lowe is currently bending down, adjusting his loop pedal, and still adjusting. Perhaps this will be edited out.
Okay. I unplugged it and plugged it back in.
Okay.
Because it's a digital pedal, so basically there's a little computer in there. So I figure we're just gonna make it reboot and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Fascinating. So chorus of the song. Who knows what you could catch in the air? 300 years of heartbreak linger there. So you catch in the air makes you think of the the virus, obviously, and now
an airborne virus after all.
Yes, and now I'm going to interject a little here too. In case your viewers do not know, you have written a very extensive book on New Orleans,
Glad you have it to show
which I
there.
own, and you can tell that I've made many. We'll just put it there. Many remarks and notes in the margins and highlights and thing. But maybe without going super deep into it, you could explain a little bit about the 300 years of history that.
Yeah. So it's actually 3 years ago in 2018 that they had the 300-year celebration because New Orleans was officially founded in 1718, by a Frenchman named Jean-Baptiste de Bienville, who is name checked in the song,
I saw that.
Mr. Bienville. And
Who also has an oyster bar.
yeah, and there's streets named Bienville. It's a very familiar name down here. But I said 300 years of heartbreak because, of all the New Orleans is a history of heartbreak, really a history of slavery and race oppression and diseases. There have been many pandemics here in the history of New Orleans, and it's been a place where obviously a lot of joy and a lot of great music and a lot of culture has already come from. And to me, that is really a triumph of the human spirit over adversity and oppression and heartbreak. Yeah.
Interesting, the 300-year celebration, very closely correlated to the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Missed it by a year, I guess. But
yeah.
And then the next line I don't really understand, which is, and the sign says "forgetting by care."
Forgotten by care. So New Orleans is a city of many nicknames, right? There's the Crescent City, is probably the oldest and best known one. But there was a nickname called it was called the City That Care Forgot. The City That Care Forgot, and that came from like the 1920s, from like travel guides. For a while they started calling it that, and I think there was a sign. There's also a big sign now at several points if you drive into New Orleans that says America's Most Interesting City. Like, I don't know who came up with that one, but someone decided that should be the nickname. But anyway, yeah, the City That Care Forgot. And I always thought that was such an ironic and really just wrong way to look at New Orleans. Of course, what it's referencing is the fact that people come there to party and carouse and maybe forget their cares. And it has long had that reputation. But again, going back to the 300 years of heartbreak, it's certainly not a place that has been free from care by any stretch. So, that's the sign said "forgotten by care," but that ain't true. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
you want to listen to a little bit of it?
Yeah, let's give it a little sneak preview.
We're just going to listen to a verse chorus because we haven't released the album yet. Again, if you're watching this in the future, you know the album, you love it at this point, probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen.
So, for those of you who don't know, this is how Lowe records his tracks for all the stuff he records, and this is what it looks like. And then when he has other people play on it, he kind of condenses it a bit and sends it to me or Ted to play the drums on it. And then we have similar looking things that we loaded onto and record ourselves.
Right. And so in the top half, you can see the automation here for each track. Some of them are like your bass actually has no automation in this song. It just stays totally flat. But other tracks, like here's John's B3, you can see I raised it up. And then at the bottom here is the mixer. And so that shows you faders and panning knobs, and it shows you the plugins. Like on my Telecaster, there is this EQ. So,
nice.
And so Yeah, why don't I play the first minute and a half or so of Claiborne Avenue? Pretty sure this is the final version, so we're going to hear the final mix.
Ah.
Most summer evenings when the lights go down, camp chairs unfold on the neutral ground. But not tonight, we've got it all shut down, and that's how it has to be. There's nothing doing in Louis Armstrong's town. The Zulu king has got no Zulu crown. Step outside and you won't hear a sound, and you surely won't hear me. Who knows what you could catch in the air? 300 years of heartbreak linger there, and the sign says forgotten by care, but you know that ain't true. No drunks beneath the corner lights, carjackers all stayed home tonight, but you still keep your windows rolled up tight when you drive down Claiborne Avenue. And you can still wander around the place, but all the tourists left without a trace. But me, I'm here and I've got time to waste, and they shut down all the bars.
Nice fade out.
Yeah, there's a good 1 minute version. Right, you notice, by the way, at the end of the first chorus, there are some harmony parts which I decided not to use. And that's why the automation they're all the way down. All right.
So along the left side, I see the numbers 33, 34, 35.
Yeah.
Just how many tracks do you have here?
Well, it looks like I have 35, although this is a pretty small number for me. And it looks like I've taken out a lot of the junk out.
Okay.
You know, see, sometimes the tracks start off as demos and then they keep just evolving from the demos. And so the original parts I recorded on the demos are long gone, but they're still there in the file somewhere.
Yeah, you're pretty good about labeling, I see, though, because I learned during this that if you don't label, you're just you're screwed later when you're trying to figure out what's what.
Yeah, and you can see I've got 6 lead vocals here.
Wow.
So I've got an SM58 vocal, which I did not use. Then I have 2 TLM 103 vocals, and then I have a January vocal and 2 February vocals, and then I have a final vocal comp where there is nothing there, because I decided not to use the January and February vocals because I finally decided that the original vocal comp was fine.
And do you like recording this way as opposed to like going to a studio and getting the whole band together and playing? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is the way I've done it, so I'm really used to this. But you know, it's so different processes are going to create different kinds of albums with different feels. You know, I'd love to make a more band traditional type of album with a bunch of musicians playing live together in the studio, but that's difficult and it's expensive. So you know, I'm operating where I don't have a lot of money, but I do have a lot of time. So that's what this process is good for. Yeah. You know, I'm not paying anybody for studio time, not paying anybody for gear. I'm getting those results by just investing an awful lot of time.
Right. Which is kind of cool because it's been cool for me because when you're in the studio, everything's kind of rushed and you're paying by the hour sometimes. So
Yeah.
When I'm playing like bass for you or some other projects I've worked on too, I can really take the time to think, is this the best part for this section here? Should I put a fill here or should I not put a fill there? You know, so that's to me, the upside of really looking deeper at your part, at my part anyway.
To me, you know, I had a very formative experience with making $1.99 romances in 1994 with a big major label budget and the producer and the studios, and just finding it to be very stressful.
Yeah.
And the whole band found it to be very stressful. And then going on our own money and building a studio in our own house and making Red and having just a totally different experience. And it's not even that Red is any better of an album than $1.99. Some people think $1.99 is a lot better and others prefer Red. I mean, they're just very different, but the difference was that we just liked working that way. And that's, you know, I don't need the stress of a pro studio situation where you're just concerned about every billable hour. And you know, there's just very prone to tension.
Yeah. And nowadays you can get, would you say, as good a sound?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. We can make any sound we want to with the digital tools at our disposal. And so it's, you know, back in the day, it was just like, can we manage to make it sound good? Now we can manage to make it sound good or bad, or as good or bad or anywhere in between as we choose to do. And it's a choice. You know, we're not limited by the gear anymore. So it's all just a choice. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few more things in the lyrics jumped out at me. I Googled Zulu King to see just what that was all about.
So it's about the crew of Zulu. And Louis Armstrong, you know, who's probably the most famous New Orleanian, he was also famously the Zulu King, I think more than once. But, you know, every year the Zulu crew chooses a king.
You want to explain what the Zulu crew is? Because I'd never heard of it before that. I Googled it.
Well, the simplest way to put it is it's the black crew. It's the African-American crew, or that's the most prominent one. And it's one of the two major crews that roll on Mardi Gras Day, as opposed to during the 2 weeks of parades prior to Mardi Gras.
Ah, okay.
And the other one being Rex. And so the Zulu crew is, you know, goes through more of the black parts of town and has a mostly black membership, although not entirely. And they often end up in a big traffic jam with the Rex parade on St. Charles Avenue. And it's weird. I mean, it's weird how the sort of racial politics and history of the city get sort of ritualistically reenacted on Mardi Gras Day. It's a strange thing. And
is it usually friendly, or does it sometimes get?
It's very friendly.
Okay.
And I think, you know, the thing about, well, we may be going far afield here, but it is fascinating. But the thing about the South in general, and I think New Orleans is part of the South in this regard, is that friendliness is very important. You know, if you travel to New Jersey and New York, the parts of the country that you and I grew up in, there's not necessarily so much of a value placed on friendliness. And I don't think it's that people are necessarily unfriendly, but they can be brusque sometimes. You know, there's sort of more of a toughness, you know, and it's certainly in New York, there's more of a like, you know, come on, buddy, get, you know. Whereas in the South, there's an elaborate sense of courtesy and everyone is always very nice to each other. And I think that speaks to a way that human beings have dealt with the difficulties that exist in the South. to do with race and inequality and racial division. And so there's a lot of niceness and courtesy. Courtesy is a way of human beings have of navigating that. And I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I do, but I always wondered, like with that Southern hospitality courtesy thing, how deep it seems very surfacey to me.
Well, yes, of course it is. It is a surface. It is. I mean, courtesy in general is not an expression of deep sincerity. It's a way of acting on the surface.
So the New Yorkers and New Jerseyers are a little more honest about how they're feeling,
Yeah, and they haven't developed these rituals of being very friendly to diffuse the possible hostility that could be underlying, right?
Right.
To sort of reassure one another, yes, we're going to be friendly here, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But that being said, now it sounds like I'm saying it's not at all genuine and that it's completely fake or that it's dissembling or it's dishonest. No, I don't feel that way because human beings also sincerely enjoy friendliness. And Southern friendliness can be a beautiful thing. So it's very complicated, really.
It is. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot. I don't think we have time to go into everything, but there's a lot of history and references. Mr. Buenville, who we talked about, Claude Trenet.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating song, how you've woven it all together. I don't know if you have any more comments you want to make about the lyrics.
Well, I just thank you for paying such careful attention to them. I really like when anybody's paying attention, to be honest with you. But
well, yeah, because there's a lot here to pay attention to. Some songs are pretty surfacey. They're about a relationship or they're about one thing. This song has a lot of layers. I discovered.
Well, I decided to name the album after this track. So I definitely felt that it was at the core of what this album is about, for sure.
Yeah. And that leads nicely to another song, because as far as I know, there's at least one other New Orleans reference on this album, and that's The Fly.
Yeah, Down at the Fly.
Which I've been to, but do you want to explain what that is exactly?
Yeah, The Fly is, it's really the extension of Audubon Park, where it goes on the other side of the zoo. So in Audubon Park, you've got the golf course and you've got a jogging path and you've got a zoo. And then behind the zoo, there's the part that goes along the Mississippi River. And it's open to the public and it's accessible and it's very nice, but it's just a little bit out of the way and a lot of tourists don't seem to know about it. So it seems like it's mostly usually locals there. And it's college kids, getting stoned and playing hacky sack. And it's, there's some softball fields. So there's like some softball families. And, there's some older folk, fishing in the Mississippi River for Lord only knows what they might catch in the Mississippi River. There's a song idea there. But, it's a little bit more of a sort of down to earth, down home, New Orleans assortment of characters at the Fly than like in a more touristy place like the French Quarter.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And it has a significance to you, I take it, because it's in the song, it sounds like you're meeting someone there for a very intense sort of meeting.
Yeah. Well, that's happened. That's been something that's happened in my life. So, yeah, I've had some emotional moments at the Fly. Again, going back to what we were saying about generalizability, I hope I'm not the only one. I don't think I'm the only one who's had that. And so I guess my hope in writing the song is someone from here who's been down to the Fly might say, oh yeah, I know what he means. I don't know if I mentioned the sunset. It is a gorgeous place to watch the sunset. And that's what a lot of people come there for. They just come there at like 6 p.m. or depending on the time of year, just come there half an hour before sunset and just look over the river, sit on a blanket or on some camp chairs or something and watch the sunset because it is so beautiful. And yeah, so I've had some emotional moments at the Fly, and I've had a lot of just sitting on a bench at the Fly and looking out over the river and thinking. So,
Yeah.
it's an important place to me. And I started listening to a lot of Lucinda Williams over the last couple of years, and how important places are in her songs, and how a lot of her songs are just about places like Lake Charles or Lafayette or Slidell, or, just song after song of hers. It's a great song about places. And so I wrote a few on this record about places, particularly in New Orleans, my adopted hometown.
Cool. Is there any other New Orleans references there that you can think of?
On the record?
Yeah.
I think those are the only two that really reference it.
Those were the two that jumped out at me.
Yeah.
By the way, I had a question that's a little irrelevant here, but it talks about songwriting. How much do you think about rhyming when you write?
I think, I was actually just talking with Reed Genauer when we talked the other day. We were talking about, I think he does a really good job of not always going for the rhyme. And I think actually that's a weakness for me, is that I go too much for the rhyme sometimes. Is that I like the way that sometimes he doesn't bother. Or like, you listen to Dylan, and sometimes he's very strict with the rhyme, and other times he's just like, I don't care about the rhyme.
I have this songwriting book by Jimmy Webb. Did you ever read that one?
No.
I leaf through it every now and then. You know who he is, though, right?
Not really.
He wrote.
I want to say he's a jazz drummer, but I don't think that's who you mean.
No, he's a songwriter. He wrote the Wichita Lineman.
Oh yeah.
And MacArthur Park.
Right.
So he's written a lot of songs for other people. Linda Ronstadt, he wrote a bunch of songs, but he has this whole section about rhyming, and how he's very strict. Like he thinks if you're gonna rhyme, you should rhyme. No slant rhymes, no close rhymes. Very. But then at the end of this whole section, he says, like, but sometimes great songs don't rhyme at all. And he references America by Paul Simon, which you and I have played many times. And it's like, yeah, there's no rhyme in that whole song.
Wow. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Let us be lovers from Mary. Unfortunately, I got some real estate in my bag, so we bought a pack of sceneries and Mrs. Weiner. Wow. Damn.
Interesting. Huh?
Yeah. Well, I think the first verse of Ship is a great example of creative non-rhyming.
I agree at all. Yeah, that's a very very loose rhyme now that I think. All and now don't really rhyme at all, but it almost feels like it so wants to that you can almost make it happen. Well, that's a good one to bring up. I was very, very flattered that you put Ship on your album.
It's a great song, man. I think I told you the first time I ever heard it that I wanted to record it.
I know you did, and I'm wondering, like, because when I wrote that song, to me it was sort of a goof rock, drunken end of the night, just sort of sing along song. And when you covered it, it instantly became this sort of, roadhouse country twang song to it, I would say.
I just Dr. Loified it.
Yeah. So I was just wondering what made, that's just the way you heard it the first time.
I kind of heard that potential in it. Okay. The first time I heard it.
Yeah.
And I think, it's really great. It's got a unique energy to it that is uniquely you, but it's also very universal. And it's a very universal sentiment to me, which at the core of it, I'll try to summarize it. And of course, summarizing what a song is about is not the same as actually hearing the song, because, the song is a combination of the meaning and the words and the music and the rhythm and everything. But anyway, I think that what it's about, let's put all this fucking bullshit romance to one side and just think about spending your life with a person and how you know you're totally willing to make some adult compromises because you don't want to spend your life alone, otherwise known as swimming in shit.
Right.
And let's just be real.
Or very bad relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just a tremendously honest song. And I think that you just did that really well. And you're a great writer. I mean, you've got some other really great songs. But I think, to me, Ship is like one of the best songs by anybody I know, or anybody I don't know. It's just very effective. I remember Greg Bell, he has the same opinion. He was always like, that is a great song. I hope he likes the version that we made.
I hope so too. Greg Bell is a local promoter for anyone that doesn't know, in the Albany area, and is, promoted the Seapod. He did a lot, still does most shows. He probably did
a former school teacher
stuff. But yeah. But yeah, I would kind of give Greg Bell credit for bringing that song out of obscurity and then getting the Seapods to play it, because we didn't play it for very often for many years. And it wasn't until our reunion show that he was like, "I'm not paying you unless you play Ship." So that kind of brought it back to where now we kind of play at every reunion. It's kind of become tradition to end the night with Ship.
Well, Greg just gave us a gig today at the Hollow for the day of the album release, June 18th.
All right.
So we're going to be doing that. And we'll be playing Ship, obviously.
So if you're not watching in the future, please come to the Hollow and check this out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say, when I wrote that song, that was the first line I wrote was, "Let's build a boat, let's build a relationship," in a journal that I used to carry around. I was at Max's house, actually, Max's mother's house.
Well, that's the other thing that's great about it, TP, is just the silly play on words.
Yeah.
Ship,
So when I wrote that line, and I thought to myself, is that too cheesy? Could I sing that in a song and not feel like a little bit cheesy about it?
No, it's cheesy and it's great.
That's what I eventually embraced, because I decided to go for it, just keep writing. And as the rest of the chorus formed and the verses came out, I was like, it is cheesy, but I think I just have to embrace that there's also like some good truths, I think, in there. But so it was kind of a matter of, and I think that's why I didn't go off with the Seapods right away, because I didn't fully embrace what it was. You know what I mean? I think I was tentative about it.
One of my other favorite lines is, "From what I know of the rest of this world, I'll bet your other options stink."
Yeah.
It's so true, because it's like, I may not be perfect, but look what's out there. Where are you going to go?
Exactly. I think when I wrote that line, and I was like, "Oh, stink! That's a nice callback to Swimming in Shit." That's when I knew, okay, I got to make this a song.
I think in the Seapods, you were the George Harrison, right?
Yeah.
You had Max writing a lot of songs and Dana writing a lot of songs, and then you were like, "Can I get one song in this show?" Right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think George wrote a lot. I didn't write very much. Like, there weren't a lot of songs that I just wrote and didn't do anything with, because I still suffer from this today. Like, writing just takes a lot of energy for me. And I just decided at some point I was going to concentrate on being a bass player. And if I wrote a song now and then, great. But
have you written any new tunes in the past year? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Like, since the pandemic era and this new reality, have you done any songwriting?
I started one. I started one, and I wrote a couple of instrumentals, actually. I just did a minute and a half one with Dave Agar, where he sent me a video of Attack Theater, of this dance. It's a 1.5-minute dance. And he said, just write something, just play something to it. And then he would put the rest on top of it. Like he would overdub his cellos and stuff. So I did that. And I think that came out really good. But no, as far as like full song, start to finish, I've not written a song in a couple of years now.
So you don't have this thing that is inside me that is like, you must write songs, you've got to write songs. I think I was telling you, so you know, we let's just say that we did an interview a couple of weeks ago, or part of an interview, and like I was distracted. I was distracted by some other shit that was happening at that time, and I was eventually like, TP, but we can't do this. But one of the points I made in that interview was like, you said you've written a lot of songs, and I was like, TP, the funny thing is, from my perspective, I've written a pathetically like paltry number of songs, and like I'm a failure because I haven't written enough songs.
which blows my mind that you actually think that, by the way. Coming from, like, I mean, you must have had what, 75 God Street tunes that you wrote, would you say? Is that in the ballpark?
Easily, yeah, I would say it's more than, I'd say it's more than that, but
more than 75, just in the God Street period, and then 2 concept, what were double CDs at the time after that, and then, you know, a period when you were getting your PhD, and then since then written 2 more albums. So to me, it's like, my God, that's like a huge catalog of work.
Well, when you put it, I mean, I can see that in my sort of rational part of my brain, but I'm just saying there's on some lower level part of my brain, there's this voice that says, you haven't written any songs. Write some songs, Faber.
Well, I guess that's what drives you to write hundreds of songs.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the voice will stop. Maybe Claiborne Avenue is it.
Maybe the voice will start with me at some point. Sometimes I feel like I might have a period where I write a lot of songs. The voice in me says, you could be a better bass player. You need to practice more. That's what the voice kind of says to me.
It's funny, I don't have that at all. Not at all. Like I had a phase in the last few years where I practiced a lot on lap steel, and more recently I practiced more on keyboard because those are skills I'm trying to build up. But more or less, you know, I don't practice guitar that much, and I don't think about being a good guitar player. Although I have fun when I'm doing it. You know, when I'm playing a show and I'm playing guitar, I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. But
yeah, that's just, well, because I've been a hired gun so much, you know what I mean? After the Seapods, I played in a wedding band. I played in dead cover bands. I played people's solo, you know, originals. I've recorded with different people. So I've always just been this like sort of hired gun bass player. So I always feel like I got to be at the top of my game, or no one's going to hire me, you know? So that's what kind of drives me. The songwriting thing is just something that's kind of fun to do every once in a while. Maybe that's a little bit of laziness on my part, but yeah, that's where I stand.
Yeah, I mean, so a song like "Ship" is like that sort of fell into your head, to your lap from your imagination one day.
Yeah,
trying too hard to make it happen.
Yeah, that was just, I happened to write that one line in my journal, and I find I'm pretty good once I get that start. Like I sometimes wrote songs with the Tech Theater. They'd have a dance, and sometimes they'd want like a lyrical song, and I'd have that start. But like the start doesn't come to me that often. That's, which you know well, I'm sure, that one seed of the idea is like that first line, maybe. Yeah.
It's all about the seed.
Yeah.
Definitely. Why don't we listen to a little bit of "Ship"? Actually,
sure.
Let's do it. So we'll share the screen again. We're not going to see the multi-track here because this is just the mastering. Ted did the mix of "Ship," as you know.
Yeah.
So we're just going to see a waveform. In fact, I'll just make it. I'll make it big.
There's so much great stuff going on in this song between the fiddle, the
Rurik
lap
Noonan.
steel. What's that?
Rurik Noonan from down here in New Orleans plays
Yeah.
fiddle on the album. He did such a fantastic job.
Yeah, that's great. And you play lap steel, right?
Lap steel and acoustic guitars, and Jason on piano.
Oh yeah, so much great musicianship going on. In this
And
song.
Bevo on the B3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Oh, Bevo just played his butt off on this record.
Yeah.
He played B3 on Claiborne and down at the Fly and on Ship.
Yeah.
I think those were the three.
That's cool. Yeah, it sounds great.
Anyway, here's a little bit of the Ship from the Claiborne Avenue album.
Well, listen now. All I got, I learned from wandering. Wondered if I had a clue at all. But I know for sure you're beautiful, and that's enough to get me through for now. Let's build a boat, let's build a relationship. Let's throw our baggage overboard. We'll check for leaks, make sure it doesn't sink, 'cause I don't wanna swim in shit no more. Thanks for listening while I ramble on and on. I guess you might want time to think. But from what I know of the rest of this world, I bet your other options stink. Come on, let's build a boat, let's build a...
All right.
Nice.
We don't want to give him too much.
Yeah. Well, let me just say I'm very, very honored that you chose that tune, and you did a great job with it.
I'm happy. I'm happy how it came out, and I'm happy that you're happy. That was very important to me that I get your approval, because the very first time I said I was going to record it, I don't think that your reaction was unmixed approval. There was a little bit of, really? Or maybe I'm just making that up. I don't know, but
I think if there was that, it was probably like, yeah, I didn't think you really would. It was more like, are you just messing with me, or you really want to put this on an album? It was never on a Seapod album, so this is the first recording it's ever been on. It was.
Well, the album is also a lot about relationships. You know, both the Dr. Lowe albums are a lot about relationships. So I think that it fits for that reason as well.
Yeah, you're right. It does. It fits the theme.
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool, man. It's it's great to hear it come together like that. Take on a different vibe. And I like to see you made a couple little changes with the melody, little inflection differences. I added that little D minor chord and having the melody go up high there. Yeah, which is going to be confusing to me now when I go back to the Seapod version. But
right. Well, and it was confusing to me when I played it with the Seapods, because remember I had already made this demo at that time.
Oh yeah, that's right. So man, we're gonna do some playing soon. We have to reimagine these songs as maybe a duo or a trio or a quartet.
Yeah, we got to blow them up and inflate them and bring them to life, you know. The song is it's literally just a balloon lying uninflated on the ground, and nobody can quite see what shape it is until you gotta blow it up and have it, be visible in the parade.
Wow. Well, that might be another song right there.
That's a good metaphor, right? That just hit me right now. I never used that before.
Yeah, that's great. So we had to figure out, you did it with many pieces, many players. We had to figure out how to do it with, 2 or 3 or 4 people, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
With all these tunes.
You're right. Well, I think you and me, when we play as a duo, I feel like we're real comfortable right now. And I say that, and we haven't played for over a year.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be a little bit of a, getting past the novelty of playing together in real time again.
Right.
But I think still for you and me, it's like, there's so much looseness and freedom in playing with a duo.
Yeah.
And kind of anything can go, anything goes,
Right.
But it's almost when you have more people, then there's more coordination.
Yeah.
More sort of planning needs to take place, right? Because we all got to be on the same page.
Yeah.
Two people, if you're on 2 different pages, that's still only 2 different pages. So.
Yeah, it's only 2 pages. So. It's like opening up a book. Yeah, that's true. And especially if the 2 people are listening to each other, you can't go too wrong.
Right. And it's real easy to listen when there's only one other person to listen to.
Right.
So
but we did some 4-piece shows that I think went pretty well. So
yeah. No, we played a few shows with Sam Doyle, and I thought even playing as a trio, that was real nice.
Yeah, that was great.
So I mean, one thing I really enjoy about you and about me is that I think we've both grown a lot as musicians since the days when we were back in our bands in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Because, when you're in a band and you're younger and that's all you do, you just have tunnel vision as a musician, and you know how to sound good playing those songs with that band. But you don't have the breadth that we've gained in the years since from playing in a lot of different, more different situations, especially you, actually.
Yeah. Totally.
And so, I think it's, in some ways, it's less of a struggle now.
Oh, definitely.
To get it together.
Yeah. The Seapods weren't particularly schooled, we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. And since that time, I've actually gone back and studied some theory and, learned a lot more than we knew back then. God Street was a little more schooled musicians.
Oh, we were hampered by our schooling. I mean, we were too schooled, and we were sort of like under the illusion that it mattered, that knowledge, and it doesn't really.
I think there's a meeting halfway place in between.
Yeah, I guess so. But we had a lot of, at least some of us had a lot of school knowledge, but in some cases that unbalanced our perspective a little bit in some ways.
Well, now that we're seasoned veterans, we can put all that aside and just play.
I hope so. It's just like, I'm so psyched to play, and yet at the same time, I've at this point I've become real comfortable with my routine and my twice a week stream and my setup, which is like we're working smoothly and everything. So, it's going to be a challenge, and it might be a little less comfortable in some ways.
But I would imagine this time you feel like you've improved over the last year because of all those streams.
I think I've improved certain skills. I think my vocals are better. My keyboard is definitely better. My looping, I never looped before, so that's becoming a skill. But I was also going to say is, I think that there will be, when there's an audience listening, that's a whole different thing. They actually bring something to it.
Yeah.
I've been playing into a camera in a room for a year. So, I think we can count on our listeners out there. You people, I think we can count on you to bring energy and vibe and thrills to these shows when we are going out and doing them soon.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait, man.
Yeah. So what do you think? Does that seem like a natural place to wind it up?
That does. I don't know how long I've been talking, but that seems like a good,
Okay.
good natural
Yeah, it
conclusion.
feels good to me. We talked about Claiborne Avenue. We talked about we didn't listen to Down at the Fly, but people will hear that when the record comes out. We
Yeah.
talked about Ship. So
Don't want to give too much away.
there's lots of other good songs on the record that we're psyched for you to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots more stuff we could talk about.
We can always talk about we talked about making a video and discussing making a plan for which songs we're going to play live in our repertoire and stuff. So
yeah,
maybe we'll do that in the future as well.
that sounds good. Yeah.
All right. Well, I love you, TP.
Love you too, man.
And we'll be talking soon.
All right. I'll see you here. I'll see you here in a little while.
Thanks for hanging.
Yeah, you got it, man. Thanks.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
See ya.